Good to go. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Onno Ruhl. I'm the representative of the Aga Khan Development Network at COP27, where we're an observer organization and also the general manager of the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat. We're very excited to be here today. First of all, because the Aga Khan Development Network believes we should not give up on 1.5 degrees. In fact, we should work harder. And there's many reasons for that, and we ourselves will do our bit by committing to having already committed and implementing a net zero target by 2030 across the entire network, including industries and commercial enterprises. But a very important thing we want to focus on today is adaptation, a big theme at this COP. And why do we want to focus on it? For two reasons. First of all, because even if we make 1.5 degrees, there's already so much adaptation that is necessary today because many people are already in trouble in their habitats. And of course, adaptation gets more difficult as the temperature runs ahead of us. So we need to figure out ways in which we learn to adapt so that we can live with whatever the result of the climate change negotiations is, because we are not giving up on mankind on the planet. And we want, therefore, to, in the Cryosphere Pavilion, and we're very grateful that the Cryosphere Pavilion is having us, focus on a specific issue, which is how do you allow people to continue to live and do well who live right at the front line of climate change in the mountains? There are many hazards there. The specific hazard we'll focus on today is avalanches, because we've made a lot of progress, we're doing a lot of work, and because it's a terrible hazard, and it is not a hazard for people who go skiing just like that in Aspen or Davos. It's a hazard for people whose very house is at risk. We'll start with a quick video to introduce, and then we'll go straight to Doug Chabot, who is leading our avalanche work all the way from Bozeman, Montana, but our work is in Central and South Asia, as he will explain. Doug, the film is rolling. Thank you. So Doug, we'll go straight over to you. Doug is in Bozeman, Montana.
Thank you so much, Onno. And also, I really want to thank everyone at COP27 showing up for this, and also for hosting us. Today, we're going to talk about mitigating avalanche risk in high mountain Asia. In specific, we're going to talk about the community-led and data-driven approaches we take to mitigate that risk. Now, here on this map, the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, which we'll refer to as AKAH throughout the presentation, creates habitats that allow communities to be resilient to disasters, adapt to climate change, and thrive. The red box is where AKAH's avalanche program is concentrated. It's in the largest mountain ranges in the world. We've got in northern Pakistan, the Karakoram, in northern Afghanistan, the Hindu Kush, and in southern Tajikistan, the Pamirs. Now, when we look at a timeline, in 2012 is when this program really kind of started. And that's when there was a historic avalanche cycle. About 148 people lost their lives, mostly in Tajikistan. In 2014, avalanches in Parabir and Nurs in northern Afghanistan killed 31 people. And then in 2015, His Highness the Aga Khan creates the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat. Now in 2016, we put up 89 weather monitoring posts. And these weather monitoring posts are manual weather stations, and we'll describe those a little bit later. And then 2017 it was quite a big year, because this is considered the watershed year that separates our pre-program and post-program periods for analysis and discussion. And so we built this database where all this weather information is going online. And then we developed the Winter Preparedness and Avalanche Readiness Program, which encompasses everything we're talking about today. We launched that. And then in 2018, the weekly weather and avalanche forecasts we're putting out to warn and inform villagers. Now in 2014, I wrote an avalanche manual, and it helped AKDN introduce avalanche education to the village level. And this manual was translated into Dari and Urdu. And Onno, I'm going to hand this back to you. Onno's the general manager of AKAH, and he's going to talk about the approach we're taking.
So I'd like to just overall explain what we're trying to do at AKAH, because we don't just work on avalanches. Our logic is that in order to have communities do with the onset of climate change and the fact that this gets worse and worse, because that's the reality we deal with, we need to do three things. First, we need to plan. We need to understand the risk in a scientific way and understand as best as possible what is the risk, where is the risk specifically in a community, which house, school, health center, piece of infrastructure, etc. Based on that, we can prepare the communities by discussing with them what are the issues, where is the risk, is your house at risk, and if so, what do you do? Is it for a mudslide or is it for an avalanche? And organize the communities with volunteers, as Doug and Shodmon will again. Shodmon, by the way, is our global head of emergency management and monitoring and evaluation, and he will speak very soon. Prepare the community. Now, the big space that we don't just want communities who live at the edge of climate change to survive. We actually want their children to do well in their future, and not by moving to the city. Doing well born. Why should a daughter of a family born in the high mountains in Central Asia not have the same future as somebody who gets born in the city? It is not the right perspective on how we want to address the problem. Where do we do this? We do this in South and Central Asia, specifically Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, in India, but that's more coastal, as well as in Syria, where the regions are more arid. Why do we work in these countries? First of all, because they're the historic parts of engagement of the Aga Khan Development Network, but very importantly, because these are some of the toughest places in the world in terms of the impact of climate change, in particular, of course, in the mountains. And we believe that if we can show that even in the Karakoram, even in the Pamir Mountains, even in the Hindu Kush, these are some of the toughest mountains in the world. Even there, people can adapt to climate change. Maybe the world will start believing not only that they have to pay for adaptation, but that we actually collectively can be successful. To us, that is very important. And that's why we want to tell you about how we do this for avalanches, and Doug will pick that up from now.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the problem. First off, thank you, Onno, for explaining all that. And so when we look at what exactly the problem, this is who we're worried about. We're worried about the people in this picture. These are the people that live in these mountain communities. They are the ones that are threatened by large avalanches. And like Onno said, unlike recreationists like skiers and snowmobilers, they rarely trigger the slides that kill them. They're truly victims. We worry about big avalanches with our program. Big avalanches, they run full track. They come to the top of the mountain all the way down to the bottom. We call them climax avalanches, and they kill a lot of people. Now, AKAH works in really difficult areas. This is a picture of Kabul. Afghanistan is a great example of this. The country is at war at decades, and the war was just one of the many hardships that these mountain communities are facing. So we want to break down the problem. Some of these areas are remote. They have really poor communication, no electricity. It actually feels like the end of the earth. This picture here is in the Wakhan area, this little finger of land that separates Tajikistan from Pakistan. And there's an incident here that happened in March 12th, when 22 people died in a village in remote northern Afghanistan. And so it was incredibly tragic, and we're going to talk about that for a second. So the Wakhan is a stark landscape. There's 6,000 meter peaks surrounding it, and a lot of them tower 2,000 meters above the valley floor. Now, avalanches have hit this village before, and people will ask, well, why haven't they moved? Well, it's complicated because Allah wills it. These are also ancestral lands. This is great spots for grazing, and they're all, it just all makes moving incredibly difficult. Now, this avalanche happened at night, and so everyone was in their homes sleeping, and it was a big snowstorm, and the snowstorm turned to rain, and the rain is what triggered the avalanche. And rain falling on snow is incredibly dangerous and is also responsible for a lot of large avalanches. When the avalanche came down, it ran full track and destroyed many homes. Here's a picture of the villagers digging out a home. And they're faced with just devastating loss. I mean, they've lost absolutely everything, including family members. This is a picture of a home where the front door is actually chock full of avalanche debris, and it killed everyone in the house. And their livestock was decimated. And what's important to know here is that livestock in these rural mountain communities is where their wealth resides. They don't have savings accounts, banks, stocks. All their wealth is in their animals. And so when their herd gets decimated, these villages, they lose their life savings. It's the equivalent of a massive stock market crash. And this is the graves of the deceased. And they're dug in the frozen earth in the middle of winter. Just incredibly tragic. So how do we prevent deaths? Well, the first thing we do is we predict a rising avalanche danger. And that's what I do. That's what I'm hired for, is I help them predict when that avalanche danger is rising. The second thing we do is we warn people, and we warn them via cell phones, sat phones, radios called VSATs, and also Jamarhanas also give warnings out. And then we train them, and we give some avalanche education, and we teach them when the danger is rising, what causes avalanches, and what to do if it happens. And then the last thing is we evacuate. We use pre-identified safe areas in the village, and we move people down valley if we need to. And so this solution is simple, and it has to save lives. So what we came up with, it has to be simple to understand, it has to be simple to implement at a local level. It has to make sense. It has to be cost effective. And it has to be sustainable. And even more importantly, it has to work for an uneducated, often illiterate population. And so what we're doing here is we first map the avalanche terrain, we teach some education, we identify some weather alert thresholds, and then we use an avalanche expert to give some advice, watch the weather closely, and we plan on evacuations if needed. And we also have certain rescue teams in case things are going really wrong. So AKAH created these hazard vulnerability risk assessment maps for every single village they work in. Now, they work out of 2,400 villages. 615 of these are at risk of avalanches. That's a lot. It's a lot of villages. It represents these 615 villages represent 46,400 residents living in under the threat of avalanches. And 40% of them are a vulnerable population. And what we mean by vulnerable is children below 12 years old, senior citizens over 60, anyone disabled, and widows. So the second thing we do is we give them some basic avalanche education. They're learning foundational avalanche awareness about why avalanches occur, how to become unstable, and what to do when dangerous conditions arise. We're going to show a quick video here from Tajikistan. This is from the field.
كمال الان شايف رئيس تشكيلات ماشا ماشتي دو افسدو بیشند در سطح کار رو لماش خريطي ترنوكي دي ماشا جو خطرناکه ماشا یست سیل ترما چرخه فوق چیزا و مشخلیتات فوق نشیل دوچه رو برای اکا دو گروه یک گروه ماشان گروه ترما از 20 نفر عبارت مند کشلو قند ارای سیکتور ارای نفرین از ارای سیکتور وزن ویرو بار که تجهیزات و فنزوکشن و برخالتا قطع فوق چیزا مخیزند. ارو تایشی چیز سوید ماشتری برخال تنداک بیفر خود سوام تخود به چیز بغیر از ده ماشای و یست نرجی ماشرت انتینا یم
دیپادی چیزگاه تمکندی تو ترانگا ماشتا بوی فاتاسیلیگا
سران مخوچی دوی فامون باشن سولند ارو زتوه چیز لرجیس ترینینگ لرجیس ید ماشا صد کلوخ سوزد و ماشتس که دستگیری سکنی نه دست که هم خوره نسبت ماشت کنی نه ماشم از وی لپاش روزی
All right, thank you. The third thing we do with our weather stations is we have specific alert thresholds that we teach the villagers about. And we tell them and teach them to be alert for these because they're signs that the avalanche danger is rising. And so with climate change, we're seeing more rain falling on snow, especially at lower elevations. Because we said before, rain is a trigger for big avalanches. And so that is why climate change is such an important thing for us. The avalanche triangle is the same all over the world. People are in the center of it, and villagers are the victims. We have terrain, which is a constant. It does not change, and it's been mapped by HVRA. We have weather, and we collect relevant weather data through these weather monitoring posts, these 89 posts. And then the snowpack arm here is limited, but recent avalanche activity definitely gives us a sense as to what's happening in the snowpack. Now, with terrain identified, avalanche activity getting reported, and looking at daily weather, I can do rudimentary weekly forecasts. And so I look every morning and I talk to AKAH staff and I help them make decisions. I put out this weekly bulletin, which is an avalanche and weather forecast, and it's updated frequently when it is storming out. And I do this all from Bozeman, Montana in the United States, which is where I am right now. Because for forecasting, remote work is effective only because we are interested in the biggest avalanches that are hitting these villages in the valley bottom. So in the past, you know, it would snow in the valleys, it would snow in the cities, and we'd wonder, well, how much did it snow in the mountains? You know, so if it snowed 5 centimeters in the valley, we might think like, oh, maybe there's 30 centimeters up high. But the answer is we needed weather stations in the mountains. We needed real measurements, not just guesses. And we started to think, well, couldn't we just give a guy a ruler and a thermometer and kind of call it good? And the answer is yes, we could do that. You know, for about $100 each weather station, we can establish a weather monitoring post. We put them in villages at the valley bottoms. It's the best we can do. These instruments are maximum thermometers, a 24-hour storm board, a seasonal snow stake, handheld anemometer, and a rain gauge. Each of these stations are fenced in to keep out children, goats, cows. It just keeps it nice and neat in there. And today we have 89 weather monitoring posts, which are managed by 150 trained men and women. They're all volunteers. They're all community volunteers taking these daily measurements. We're going to watch a video here from Nurs, Afghanistan. Nurs is where the avalanche occurred that killed 22 people that I talked about earlier.
فدا حسین است، مسئول نظارت با هوا برام قریه ولسوالی واخان ولایت بدخشان. مدت 6 سال می شود که در این بست کار میکنیم به حیث رضاکارانه و روزانه ساعت 8 صبح گزارش سرعت باد، بلندترین درجه حرارت و پایینترین درجه حرارت، اندازه برف، دیگر درجه باران رو چک میکنیم و به دفتر مرکزی گزارش میدیم. با دفتر مرکزی طبق گزارش ما معلومات به ما ارائه میکنه که تا از خطر برکوش در امان باشیم. فدا حسین هستم، مسئول
حسین بای.
Okay, I wasn't seeing myself on the screen, so I wasn't sure if we were ready, but yep. So First off, thank you for showing that video because that was impressive. Nurs is a very, very remote village. So these weather monitoring posts are placed in the most vulnerable spots, most vulnerable villages. I'm having some technical difficulties because I cannot see the slides to see what slide we're on my screen. There we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, these villages that we put these weather monitoring posts in have been repeatedly hit by avalanches. Sometimes these avalanches are so big that they come down the other side of the river. They cross the river, climb up the hill on the other side, and destroy communities on the opposite banks. And we train people in the community, they live there, to take these daily weather observations. Now, behind these men is a village, and we make these weather monitoring post measurements in the village behind them, and they're good. But in the mountains, what we'd like to do is learn about how much snow is up high where the avalanche actually starts. So we needed a way to measure snow depth in the starting zones, like high up on the mountains. So we created these snow mass, which is what they are holding right here. And each color represents a meter depth. So as the snow piles up and it covers one of the colors, we can guess, or we can make an estimate as to how much snow is on the ground. And this can be seen from the valley below. And so with a spotting scope, a villager can see the snow mass and get an estimate of the snow depth. Now, when I was explaining this in Tajikistan through an interpreter, I was explaining, hey, when the weather's clear, get your spotting scope, look up at the snow mast, and and if there's no visibility, don't worry about it. Just get it when the weather's clear. And this guy said, he goes, no, sir. He says, if it's cloudy, I will go up there. If I cannot see from the valley, I will walk up there and I will tell you how much snow is on that stake. And I said, no, you cannot do that. You're going to die in an avalanche if you do that. These things are really high. And so I made sure that the translator conveyed to him how that would not be a really good idea. Now, each thumbtack in this map represents one of our 89 weather monitoring posts, basically 89 people with rulers, and they report every single day to AKAH about what they're finding. They give us weather data 95 to 100% of the time. I mean, it's incredibly reliable. Now, in vulnerable villages, we identify safe areas that they can evacuate to. AKAH has also trained personnel to help in evacuation and rescue people if needed. Now, next, Shodmon. He's the global head of emergency management for all of AKAH. He's going to explain how this is implemented.
Thank you very much, Doug. And good afternoon to everybody. The seventh point that we are highlighting here, it's primarily talking about our volunteers, search and rescue teams, and the slide which you see there is primarily showing our advanced search and rescue teams, which we have 160 over our target areas. So the question pops how we are selecting our volunteers, and the details are on the slide. You can see it from there, that primarily they are all coming, they are joining the teams voluntarily. Nobody is forced. The process is done in a very selective manner. We are talking to the village heads. People should not have bad background. They should be cleaned, yes. They should have a good track record, good behavior in the village. And we are selecting them from various backgrounds, health, education, background. Some people are young, some people are elder age because of respect and etc. And people have to respect the country law. People have code of conduct, and our teams are adhering to this. And as Doug was also mentioning, you could see that we have a very large number of villages that our volunteers are dispersed across. And then a question pops up, how we are keeping in touch with our volunteers. And there's a small video which shows how we are connecting with our villages. The video, please.
شدید بدبوری هست دیگه امکانات درست وجود نداره راه مردم با مسئله غذایی هم هست و طرف هم داری بیسر مونده و همراه کنید و رحمت یا امریکایش کنده دیگه مطاری ما مبادرت تنظیبات دیگاه هست راهبندی هست دیگه پیاده ببینیم که
گفتن خواست داریم شاید یک نیم ساعت دیگه به قیره برسیم و این همه رقم بیفتیم حتی موزه پوشیدیم دیگه پیاده به حساب بریم بود دیگه با رفتنش هم و هوا بالندگی است و در این حالت بالندگی این دستگاه هم تا چاش خلاص بدیم در قریه بودک و حال دستگاه زور هم دوشان را تا شانس
Thank you very much, the team. So you saw this video clip is coming from Afghanistan, one of the very remote villages. So we are using emergency communications to get in touch with these villages. We still have many villages in our target areas which are deprived. There are political issues like in Afghanistan. You cannot install communications because the government is not allowing it. But we are still trying our best to get it to our villages. And the next question which pops up, does all this thing that Doug and I were talking about, does it really work? And if we go to the charts that you can see, the two graphs which are on the slides, if you can look at them, you can see that in the first chart at the left upper part, it tells us that the number of avalanches is quite high in our target areas. It's more than 1,000 that we are recording over the years. And if you see the second chart, it tells that despite the number of avalanches increasing, which primarily is because of launching the program, because we have accurate data recording, the number of fatalities is decreasing because of various interventions that we were talking about. And as you see, the ratio of event fatalities to event is also decreasing in our core areas. If you pay attention to control areas, which is the chart below, though this data is not fully accurate, but this is the maximum data that we could collect from our neighboring areas where we are not having the program, it shows that despite lesser number of avalanches, the fatality ratio is quite high there. And another question which pops up, yes, why it is working? Why avalanche are happening, more avalanches are happening in our target areas, there are less fatalities. And what our experience is primarily telling, like there are two primary reasons. The first reason is that we are following a vast approach. Like anything we are doing in our target areas, we do it, the first thing, it is government partnership. Whether it is Tajikistan, whether it is Pakistan, whether it was somewhere else, we are always talking to government authorities, we are getting permissions. We have Colonel Eronsho here, We are constantly partnering with the Committee of Emergency Situation and Civil Defense, with national disaster management authorities. And the second thing is that we have regular presence. Our communities, they are coming from the same villages. They are not coming from outside. So they are always there. And the third thing is that our approach is programmatic. We don't do a small-scale project and leave the areas. As you saw it, we are present since 2017 and are working. And the last point is, which really makes this model work, there is trust and commitment. So the work of volunteers is highly appreciated. People give lots of respect to them. We had an incident in 2017-2018 winter in Afghanistan. Some family members, they didn't want to leave the areas. Then the volunteers came with elder age people. Then some government authorities were also involved. They came to the village. They requested the family members. They left. And then the next day, 9 houses were wiped out by the avalanches. But one thing which is worth mentioning, yes, it is working. It is giving very good results. But we also have areas where we need to improve in future. And with that, I'm just handing over to Onno, who talks about next steps.
So it works, but the risk is getting worse. Avalanches will be more. No matter what happens at this conference, avalanches will be more in coming years. So what are we going to take this program to? First, we're going to be more ambitious about understanding long-term risks so that we can see whether it's actually possible to keep working with these communities and keep their habitat safe, because that's our target. We're mapping these same areas 30 years from now, 50 years from now, to understand the long-term climate risks. We also want to bring to these mountains what is already available above Aspen, Davos, Chamonix, and other areas where you might want to go skiing. The ability to understand the details of the weather so that people who are not going to the mountains for fun but actually live there are as safe as those people who pay lots of money to go to the mountains for fun. For that, we need to make sure that technologies that exist in Switzerland and other areas are made more robust and cheaper. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're working on automated weather stations. We're working on snowpack modeling. We're working on mitigation structures. Anybody who's ever been to the mountains, these things look like. You think they're simple. They're very expensive, actually, but we work with our teams to make them cheaper because they're highly effective to actually stop avalanches in their track. Because our goal is to make sure that it is as safe to live in the villages that you saw in the videos as it is to go skiing in Aspen. And I love Aspen. I got nothing against people who are skiing. I just think it is so important to protect these habitats, and all of us think that. So what lessons do we want you to take home? First of all, if you invest in local capacity, you're more likely to be successful. That is well known. But I think the approach, the building of trust in the community, the sustainability, and really sticking with it long term is very effective. The second thing is building global and local expertise together. We didn't want Doug to come because we wanted to show that he does his work from Montana, which is much cheaper. So he's disappointed. He doesn't get to go to the beach in Sharm el-Sheikh. But on a daily basis, he sits at home drinking his coffee, predicting avalanches in northern Afghanistan. It's just unimaginable, but it works. The third thing is partner with government. You cannot do this work if the government doesn't allow you, because the government actually has the primary responsibility for the safety of its citizens. So we must work with governments and not just be as an NGO on our own. It cannot work. And the last thing is, if the problem is too difficult, like I said, the technology in Switzerland is too expensive, you just work until you figure out how to make it cheaper. We work in a part of the world where engineering can be made very cheaply, where excellent science is available. Of the 1,000 staff of our agency, 950 are from the areas we work from, if not more. And that's how we like to keep it. That's why our global of emergency management, Shodmon, is from a village in the Pamirs in Tajikistan. His predecessor, Nusrat, is from Upper Hunza in Pakistan, because you need to combine cutting-edge knowledge with local knowledge. Because, ladies and gentlemen, simple solutions are actually effective, and I think we can outrun climate change.
Один из опытов, который показал себя всесторонне, это задействование волонтерской инициативы во всех спектрах стихийных бедствий. Волонтеры, которые были созданы посредством ХК и Комитет по чрезвычайным ситуациям, это очень организованная и слаженная команда, которая реагирует на всякие стихийные бедствия и тем самым облегчает нам работу. Второй фактор – это еще весомый вклад с темой мониторинга и раннего оповещения, который их непосредственное присутствие и установки очень важны в нашей стране, потому что мы можем вовремя определить ту или иную угрозу и, соответственно, будем принимать меры соответствующие.
One of the experiences that proved to be comprehensive is the involvement of the volunteer initiative in all spectrum of natural disasters. Volunteers are very organized and well-coordinated system that respond to different disasters that are happening in the country. And the volunteers at the same time do the very good job, and at the same time they make our work easy. And the second factor that is there is the installment of the monitoring systems that we have in Tajikistan. The early warning system that we call EWS installed on Saris Lake, and this EWS proved to be very excellent and giving a very good result for the country.
Thank you very much. Please have a seat. I'll come now to Afghan Raza. Afghan, can you hear us? Do we have Afghan? Afghan, could you just share with us, because you're one of the volunteers who's working on assessing climate and natural hazards. From your perspective, why do you... Yes. From your perspective, why is it important, the work that you do on the weather monitoring, the climate monitoring, and what are the benefits and challenges? And please unmute before you speak, because you're currently muted. Afghan, please unmute. Press the microphone symbol. Why don't we go to Dilshodbegim first, and then you can maybe message Afghan to unmute, and we'll ask him the question. Dilshodbegim can go there. So Dilshodbegim was a volunteer for a very long time, and you know, the main task of a volunteer is to get people to evacuate when there's a reason to do so. Now, in the West, we know this is very difficult. We very often hear that there's a storm coming, people need to evacuate, but then people don't evacuate. As you can see from the statistics, our volunteers manage to get volunteers to evacuate. Dilshodbegim, can you speak about how that works and why that works and give an example?
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ruhl. So our community in Pamirs are having a very strong attitude towards the volunteering perspective, and it is the work for the volunteering jointly with the government agencies who do all the evacuation process and the village place where the risk of different disaster exist. And many people do all the necessary involvement except in doing the volunteers' work, not to be hard and complete it. And whatever the volunteers say, they immediately act and perform all the rescues. Coming from the volunteering, coming from volunteers' side, I can tell you the example from Barsem village. It is in Tajikistan. The Barsem village where the mud flow vanished, a very big village, and 82 houses have been destroyed. People have been displaced only because of the volunteers. There was no loss of human lives. Okay.
Thank you, Dilshodbegim. Is Afghan now on?
No.
Not working. Okay, in that case, let's first go back to the Colonel. Colonel, if somebody from another government came to you and said, we would like to know how we can solve this problem in our country. We would like to warn people so that they can survive avalanches and live a better life despite this risk. What would be your advice to a government official? What would you advise them to do?
Какими передовыми методами и уроками вы могли бы поделиться с другими партнерскими странами, которые задали бы вам вопрос, как мы можем и как разумно можно подходить к разным проблемным ситуациям в таких сферах? Аналогичный подход в адаптации на уровне сообществ.
Своевременная подготовка к разным стихийным бедствиям, это всегда приводит к успеху и тем самым минимизирует потери, в том числе людские потери. В наши дни показали себя очень эффективно это системы мониторинга и раннего оповещения. Это волонтеры, которые иногда даже приходят на помощь первыми, чем другие структурные подразделения и неправительственные организации, потому что они живут на тех местах, где именно приходят стихийные бедствия, и, естественно, они приходят первые на помощь. Иметь контейнеры с запасами первой необходимости, нужно создавать временные лагеря для лиц, пострадавших от стихийных бедствий. Вот таким образом можно своевременно реагировать на разные стихийные бедствия.
In today's reality that we in today's reality that we see, there are so many aspects that can be very good to tell to our partner organizations, to partner countries, for saying that for being successful, it is very nice. Firstly, to install in the hazard places the early warning system, the volunteering teams, to establish volunteering teams, to install the stockpiles that are very necessary in different villages, and this is a very productive and very important aspect that have to be installed in the village places for different disaster aspects. And these are my advice for the countries in order to be prepared for the different disasters, to install all those pre-perspectives that can be used in those disaster moments.
Thank you very much, Colonel. The advice of the government is essentially to start volunteerism. Now, I'd like to hear from Dilshodbegim. If you had to advise another country where to start building a system, what would your advice be?
Okay, I can advise for other organizations, for other communities to support as much the volunteer perspective, because the volunteers are the community people, and only these people can provide their support at disaster time on the very timely basis. And as we can see, their early preparedness with the volunteering team can be much effective than without them. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
I just wanted to check whether Afghan is now has sound. Yes?
No.
Very good.
Yeah.
So, Afghan, very sorry it didn't work earlier, but we would like you to tell us about your experience as a weather monitoring volunteer. Why do you think this is important, and how hard is it, or how easy is it? What do you think about it? It seems very tough to me.
First of all, I am very thankful for me such a beautiful platform to speak on behalf of the agency by on behalf of my site members, my monitoring post, and all those members excited. Basically, my name is Afgan. Prague is the wilderness area. Here we have harsh weather. We are directly affected to climate change. These climate change events as northern, and these are directly affecting us. So we have a different around number of weather monitoring in Prague. We work in different regions. We are getting information, we are providing information to our ward members, our staff members, for different channels. They are getting updated, so groups residing, those officials who are residing in Ruhl, they are providing information to us, so we convey this kind of information to our communities, our cluster areas, our staff, in our community politics. So they further transfer this information to the community. There are some challenges as well to us while providing this information to the community. Because the first one is the implementation program. Yes, sometimes that we are unable to communities due to harsh weather, due to the launch, due to the disasters in a certain area. Our is broken, so we are unable to get the information in the proper time. But due to our volunteer team in very specific area, they convey our messages, they community in that area, and they get information, they are updating to us for different channels. These are some of the challenges we are facing while we are transferring information to them. Basically, we have been working on different types of different things, for seminars, for trainings. these platforms are giving our communities below disasters. These are some of the things from which our communities are taking.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Afghan. So, for the people in the room and those online, I see that there's some in the chat. If there's any questions online, we could answer them. If anybody in the room would like to answer a question, there is a microphone that could be used. And you could ask a question to the Colonel, to our volunteers, to Shodmon, to Doug. Please, can you check the chat because we can't see it? Please, sir, you switch it on.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Hojibekov. I am a representative of Committee for Environmental Protection. Thank you for your clear presentation. I have following question. As I know, about 93% of the Republic of Tajikistan occupied by mountains, and more than 70% of the population living in a rural mountainous area. So maybe you explained in your presentation, but once again, how you will identify the risk zone in the mountainous area? Could you please explain it briefly?
So can you explain how?
Thank you very much. I think that is a very great question. So what Doug was talking about is what we are calling hazard vulnerability risk assessment. In Tajikistan, we have a methodology, HVRA, hazard vulnerability risk assessment methodology, which I myself was working in this field. And that time, Rais Ayubzoda Murad Ruhl and his team at Department of Geology under the President of Tajikistan. So the methodology was reviewed, and hundreds have been assessed using this method, which comprises of set of indicators that are used to identify the risk level of various villages. So using this methodology, what the agency does together with its government partners, whether it is in Tajikistan, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, the villages get classified. Some of them are green, some of them are yellow, which means there is a moderate risk level, and some of them are red. So this is how we are classifying the risk. Thank you very much for your great question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shodmon. So with that, we understand there's no questions in the chat. So with that, we'd like to really thank you, everybody online. We will keep working to make sure that people on the front lines of climate change are safe, no matter what the results of the climate change negotiations are. But we'd be really grateful to the climate change negotiators to help us in our work by not dropping 1.5 degrees. Thank you very much.